And now I have some amazing pieces from other mosaic artists, and they have mine. But what I wanted was very specific. I wanted a small, intimate group where we actually exchanged our artwork with each other. So in this video, I want to share how I created the online mosaic art group in case you're interested in doing the same. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons of doing this because yes, there are pros and cons. But I also want to share how you can easily and quite possibly quickly pull an art group together, whether it's mosaics or some other art form. And all of this is free! Free! You don't have to pay for any of this. Do not pay for advertising. Don't pay for none of that. Let's get to it. Welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Every so often, I get a comment here on one of my videos asking how can you create an online art group? I love that you guys want to do that, whether it's a mosaic art group or some other art form. There's nothing like surrounding yourself with people who share a common interest as you. Now, I've created online mosaic groups as well as in-person mosaic groups. And today's video will concentrate on the online mosaic groups, but the tips that I share can be applied whether you want to create a mosaic group or some other art form. So I have experience creating an online mosaic art group because I wanted to feel more connected to people who make mosaic art, but I wanted it to be in a smaller, more intimate setting. For example, not a big community board or Facebook group where there are thousands and thousands of members. So let's see, my son is 15 years old, so about 14 or 15 years ago, I created an online mosaic art group. And I was a member of some of those larger mosaic art groups where there are thousands and thousands of members. But what I wanted was very specific. I wanted a small, intimate group where we actually exchanged our artwork with each other. And now I have some amazing pieces from other mosaic artists, and they have mine. So we not only exchanged our artwork with each other, but we also were able to talk about some tiling challenges, where to find tesserae. Maybe we had some issues with adhesives or grout, and we were all spread out throughout the United States. So in this video, I want to share how I created the online mosaic art group in case you're interested in doing the same. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons of doing this because yes, there are pros and cons. But I also want to share how you can easily and quite possibly quickly pull an art group together, whether it's mosaics or some other art form. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Now, when you hear that members in my group exchanged their mosaic artwork, what was the first thing that came to mind? Be honest. Were you thinking, wow, it sounds really, really cool. That's awesome. But where would I find the time? Or, that could be expensive. Or what about, what substrate would I use for my mosaic? Or what would the design be or the theme be of my mosaic? I don't know that I could come up with something. Well, the beauty of our group was we took all of those things into consideration and we were able to figure out a way to make it work. We were all ages, we were all at different stages of life. I was a new mom, my baby had some health challenges, and I was desperate to connect with other mosaic artists who, they didn't know it, but they were encouraging me to get back to the art that I loved to make. Some were grandmothers, some were working multiple jobs. But we leaned on each other, and like I said, we supported each other. Now, leading a group does come with its challenges, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But ultimately, it was those challenges that drove me to find a replacement to take over leading the group. So our group exchanged what are called artist trading cards, or ATCs. Now, I've done a video here on my channel where I designed 5 different ATCs, and I'll include a link to that video down below in the description. You can access this information if you're watching on your desktop computer by clicking more under the video description. And if you're watching on your tablet or smartphone, you can click more to the right of the video title. If you've never heard about ATCs before, they're roughly slightly larger than a standard size business card. So they measure 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So the design on your ATC could be vertical or horizontal. A good substrate for a Mosaic ATC could include wood or acrylic or glass, just to name a few. One of the members of our group cut a bunch of wood ATC substrates, and we were able to purchase those from her. But I'll include links to the other acceptable substrates down below in the description. I organized our group on Facebook, and it was private. Facebook, is a great free resource for doing this exact type of thing. Now, back in the day, 15 years ago, the restrictions on group settings were not how they are now. They were not as robust. So although we were a private group, members of the group could accept or admit outsiders into the group. So that brought up a big kind of issue. So for me, it was 20 members. 20 members for me was what I thought I could handle. And it turned out that other members were allowing people to come in to the point where our group grew to almost 40 members. It's almost double what my cap was. And I had to let members know they couldn't let other members in at least until I got my footing and bearings on how to run the group. So how the group worked was every other month I would post sort of an all call. What did we want to do? What theme did we want to do for our next exchange? And people would chime in and give their input or their vote. And whatever theme had the biggest number of votes was the theme we went with. Now, I'm sure sometimes there were maybe a few people who didn't participate in the exchange, and maybe it was they didn't like the theme. It could also be that they just, at that time, didn't have the time. Maybe resources were tight, whatever it was. But not every single exchange involved all of us. In fact, I think I missed one of the exchanges once. I don't remember, my son was going through a stage where he had a couple surgeries and stuff. And so I can remember doing the exchange, and I'll tell you how I did that, but I remember facilitating the exchange, but I didn't actually have an ATC to exchange with a member. It felt kind of weird, but as the organizer or the leader or whatever, you got to do what you got to do. But again, there was no pressure on anybody to participate. But I have to say, once we decided on a theme for the next exchange, it got exciting because members were excited with what they were doing with their particular mosaic, and they would share in our chat, and it got you excited as well, even though none of us knew who that mosaic was going to go to. And then it was exciting to see that once the recipient got their mosaic and they posted a picture, we saw all of those details that they had shared like a month before in the chat. So it was really fun. So when the time came for us to do the actual drawing of names, we would set a time and we would all be live in our little Facebook group. It never happened that we were all together except for that time when we were drawing the names, which is so much fun for us all to be together. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of chatter on as names are being called, and oh, you're so lucky you're getting hers, or oh, remember what she said about what she did with her ATC. So it was definitely a lot of fun to be together at that time, as well as you knew at that point whose card you were going to get. So I did a live drawing of the names. I just used a random number selector that I found online. I didn't match people up. It was done by random. And so that was a lot of fun. And then once you knew who your ATC was going to go to, it was up to you to contact that member to get their mailing address. I did keep an active spreadsheet in Excel that covered all of our exchanges so that I knew whose ATC had gone to who and during which exchange. And I tried to make it, since we had almost 40 members, I tried to make it so that one member never sent their card to that same member again. At least the thought was, go through everybody once and then you can start repeating again. And I think that that was cool because then we all built up a really diverse collection of ATCs from all of these different members who were in our group. And now I have some gorgeous artist trading cards from other Mosaic artists, which I absolutely treasure. And it's so fun to see how each of us interpreted the same theme in our own way. So each artist would post pictures of their cards, but also the recipients would post pics of the cards once they received them, and they would share how excited they were and what they thought of the card. Maybe sometimes there's some little details that don't come through in a picture, but then the recipient describes what's there, and it was really special. And sometimes members would also send a little something extra in their package to the recipient. So besides their ATC card, I remember getting some cool tesserae. I got some note cards. Another time I got a book. And so it was just fun. It was like Christmas every other month. You were getting a little mystery package, and it was sweet. And as I said, we took into account that everybody had lives, they had budgets. And sometimes, you got to take into account that maybe you just don't feel like making mosaics, and that is okay. And if the number of members for the next exchange was an odd number, there was always, and I mean always, somebody in the group who had made at least one extra, if not more, ATCs just because they love making them. And so if it came to be that we had an odd number of members to participate in the exchange, somebody always stepped up to the plate and said, hey, I got an extra one, put me down that I'm going to send to 2 different people. Didn't mean that they were getting 2 cards back, but, they were lending a hand and making sure that everybody was covered. So of course, keeping the exchanges to every other month allowed all of us some breathing room. And even if somebody didn't participate in an exchange, or we didn't have an active theme, for an upcoming exchange just yet, we would still poke our heads into the Facebook group daily, usually, just to say, hey, hope you're having a good day, or I've run into a situation. Can anybody chime in and help me out with this? So it was really a great little support group. It was great. So as I mentioned, running a group does have its pros and cons, and the pros are pretty much everything that I've already discussed in this video. But in full transparency, I couldn't talk to you today about how to create an online group if I wasn't also honest about some of the cons that come with this. And those cons are ultimately what got me to leave the group. Now, I will say that nobody was ever nasty to me. Ever. They were not nasty to me at all. There was a lot of drama with a couple of the members, and it did just ultimately get to be too much. I don't like a lot of drama, and it just got to be a little too much, and I didn't want to get involved with what was going on. I had to make a decision, and so the decision was, my mental peace. So I found somebody who was very, excited about taking over, and so that was great. That was great. But ultimately, as the leader of an online group like that, the members are going to speak to you privately, which I understand. I mean, that is life. Sometimes these things happen. It's fine. It's expected. And some of the less drama that was going on was that one member didn't like another member. And so there was no way they wanted, and they made it known, they did not want their artwork sent to this person. So I had to make sure that that exchange never happened. It's not that I live in a bubble, but I really wanted to create a group, a small group, where everybody got along. I know that's not reality, but there was some deep drama, and then there was just that sort of more surfacey kind of drama. There was just a lot of stuff for being such a small group. Ultimately, it just sort of pushed me not over the edge, but it just sort of like, you know what? This isn't working for me. So another thing I noticed was some members were offended by some colorful language, or how some people, maybe their demeanor in the chat, how they handled themselves was offensive to some of the members, and I would hear about that. I take responsibility in that I was, the online leader, and basically all of this came about because I never had rules in place. I didn't feel like I needed to tell people, hey, let's be kind here. We all love mosaics. That's our common denominator. We're a small group, pretty much. Let's be kind. Let's be thoughtful. Let's be considerate. Keep that outside of the group. But I didn't start the group off with any rules. So you need to have rules in your group. Doesn't mean you've got to sit there with, a stick and be this whatever tyrant. But a few ground rules doesn't hurt. So maybe some things like speak kindly to each other. You don't have to participate in every exchange that we do. Maybe you do have but you must participate in 5 every year, or, whatever your rules are, so that somebody isn't just taking up a space in your group, especially if you want to keep it small and active. You just have a few rules that allow everybody to see that you're working from the same page. I do see how my casual approach to this group didn't help me steer the ship during rough waters, but overall, I loved the experience of exchanging artwork with other mosaic artists, and I don't want to paint the picture that it was a negative experience. I think a lot of it was my own doing, that my intentions were great. Let's bring in mosaic artists together. But I think I needed to have a little more groundwork in place so that everybody could abide by the same rules. So if you're interested in starting an online art group, the good news is you have so many options to get things going. So first, let me tell you how I got my group together. I posted on my personal Facebook page asking if anybody would be interested in joining a Mosaic art group. And I got a few replies from Mosaic artist friends, and I said, hey, do you have any other Mosaic artist friends who might be interested? Reach out to them and see. And sure enough, they did have friends who wanted to join. I didn't really give any other information because I didn't really have any rules or whatever, obviously, like we were just talking about. I didn't have a whole lot put together. I just was curious initially, is there even an interest in what I wanted to get going where you're exchanging your Mosaic artwork with another Mosaic artist? Because we all know how long it takes to create a mosaic. A lot. So it turns out there was interest in creating an online Mosaic art group. And that's how my group grew organically. So once we had a decent sized group, and like I said, I wanted about 20 members, we then started talking about some of the rules, I guess you could say, on how we would pick what the theme was going to be, how often we would do an exchange, how we would pick the names of the recipients when it was time to do the exchange, what the timeline was in between the names getting picked and when we wanted the recipients to have their ATCs by. So as I mentioned, I posted on my personal Facebook page asking if anybody wanted to join. I think that's also a great place to host your group because it's free. It has all the bells and whistles you would need, for kind of a low-key art group. And everybody is on Facebook. Another way to try to get members into your group would be to talk to friends, family, co-workers, folks at your place of worship. If you participate in a tennis class or yoga, you could ask around there. Think about your life and where there are other people. I know that's crazy, but I mean, like my son is on a baseball team, I could talk to some of the parents there. Sort of start thinking about who are you interacting with, and they don't necessarily have to have voiced to you that they are a Mosaic artist or interested in mosaics. You just never know who would want to get involved in mosaic art. You can also request on your Instagram or TikTok accounts and just sort of put an all call out that is anybody interested in joining an online art group. And initially, keep it simple. You don't have to have everything figured out, but once you get your group together, you can start the process of trying to come up with the rules that everybody is, buying into or interested in. Once you have a little skin in the game, you're a little more invested. And so your members, if they feel like they're contributing to the group and the groundwork, they will be a little more invested in the success of it. And also, if you live in a gated community, there's usually some sort of clubhouse. If there's a bulletin board around there, maybe you talk to property management or whatever, and you find out if you can just put a little flyer on that bulletin board, letting people know about your online art group. And speaking of bulletin boards, public library, local coffee houses, your place of worship. If your yoga studio has a place where members of the public can post things on there. Think about where you go in your daily activities and see if there's a way that you can get a little scrappy here. Have a flyer, put it up, and try to get the word out about your online group that you're trying to create. If you or a family member has a bulletin board at their office or place of employment, ask them if they'll put up your flyer. You want to reach out to as many people as you can, and all of this is free. Free. You don't have to pay for any of this. Do not pay for advertising. Don't pay for none of that. This is all free. It's all word of mouth. It's a beautiful thing. So once you get all of your people together, whatever that cap number is, and whether you get to that cap number or not, heck, maybe you have to start a wait list because you have so many people. That would be awesome. But you want to start up a Facebook group. Make sure that it is private. Make sure it's just you that has the ability to add members, or if you want to have like a co-leader with you, make sure it's just the two of you. Members should not be able to add and bring in unless you don't care how many people are in your group. But that to me brings on anxiety. I can't imagine that. It's your group. It's your rules. Another thing you want to do, which I didn't do, but I think it's important, and some of the flowery language that went on in my group and how some people were offended by it or whatever. Within your group rules, you should also talk about some conduct besides just let's treat everybody with kindness. Be a little more specific, and that there also needs to be sort of a punishment if these rules are broken. What will happen? Will there be a first warning and then the person is kicked out of the group? Think about those sorts of things. We all need to have some sort of guardrails up, so our boundaries up, so we know what is right and what is wrong, or what's acceptable and not, and you know what I mean. Basically, you just want to create a safe place for everybody in the group, and then you are off and running. We're having to record in between the beep, 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 beep. Somebody keeps backing up on the street here. Okay, let's get serious, okay? Serious here. And the garbage truck is, come on now. That segment is gonna be a mess to edit, cause I don't know what I was saying there. I just was like rambling and rambling. I'm gonna have to edit that down because, whoo, I don't know what I was saying. I mean, I know what I was saying, but y'all were getting an earful, so we'll try to fix that a little bit, because, yeah. For more Mosaic inspiration, check out one of these two videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!